Welcome back to the channel. And this week I attempt some of the craziest bluffs of my life, so stay tuned to see if they work out. For the year 2025, I'm trying to make $25 an hour while playing the same amount of hours at both 1-2 and 1-3. The year is quickly coming to an end, so let's see where we stand. After booking our biggest 1-2 win of the year last week, our stats got a much needed boost. I've now played 97 hours even in this game and profited $3,341 for an hourly win rate of $34.44. Even though we lost at 1-3 last week, we somehow avoided disaster after playing some awful poker. We've now played 94 hours even in this game and profited $3,809 for an hourly win rate of $40.52. Combining all these stats, I've now played 191 hours of live poker in 2025 and profited $7,150 for an hourly win rate of $37.43. I only have 9 hours left to play in the year since I'm trying to play 100 hours even at each stake, so in order to get closer to achieving our goal, let's head out to the nicest card room in Northern California, which is none other than Stone's Gambling Hall. We buy into the 1-3 match stack game for $500, and waste no time before getting in on the action. In this hand, it gets folded all the way to the cutoff, who just calls for $3. Button only calls as well, and I'm in the small blind and look down at ace-3 offsuit. In my 5 years of playing poker, I've never seen someone limp with a strong hand in this late of position, so even though I have a weak offsuit ace, it's time to put in a raise. I make it $20 to go, and both limpers are my only customers after the big blind folds. Off to a flop three ways of ace-3 deuce with 2 diamonds giving us top 2 pair. I could obviously throw out a value bet, but my thought process at the time was to figure out how to get the most money in the pot on the flop before we see any action killers on the turn. So I decided to go for the check raise, figuring these guys have a lot of offsuit ace-x hands in their range, but unfortunately they both check it back. Still going 3 ways to an action turn and the king of diamonds bringing in the front door flush. No point in checking this for a second time because I need to get value from all the king x hands with or without a diamond and to charge all the aces that checked back the flop. So I throw out a bet of $35 and just get called by the button, increasing this pot to $130. Off to a river hoping to avoid a 4th diamond, and we get what we want when the 6 of clubs peels off. This card shouldn't change anything unless our opponent specifically has ace-6 since 5-4 was already a straight on the flop. So my goal with this river bet is to target all the aces they check back and all their strong kings. I think $65 is a fair price for all those holdings, but our opponent says how they missed and ends up tossing their hand in the muck. After a horrible start to both sessions last week, it's nice to finally get our stack in the positive right away for a change. In this next hand, there's 2 limps from the field and I'm in the cutoff and look down at ace-jack offsuit. Good enough for a raise, so I make it $15 to go and get called in 3 spots from the button, small blind, and player in early position. With $65 in the pot, we're going 4 ways to a flop of king 8-7 with 2 diamonds giving us a whole lot of nothing. Checks to me, even though the king is better for our range than theirs, bluffing into 3 people without at least a draw is basically lighting money on fire, so I check and action gets checked through. Off to a turn, and it peels off the ace of spades, giving us top pair 3rd best kicker. Checks to me again. Now we have the green light to throw out a value bet. The first 2 players are never checking 2 pair or better twice in a row. The button would have probably bet ace-8 and even ace-7 when we checked to him, so I'm 99% confident we have the best hand. I want to bet an amount where weaker aces won't fold and all the straight and flush draws will call. I settle on a bet of $45 and get 1 customer from the small blind, increasing this pot to $155. Off to a river hoping to fade a ton of cards, and it rolls out a super interesting one in the 10 of clubs. Our opponent only has 130 left in his stack, and now we have ourselves a decision. Check, bet small, or go all in. This specific player isn't the type to bluff their missed draws, so checking is out of the question. Betting small is a decent option to ensure weak aces call, but I decide on option 3 and go for glory by putting our opponent all in. If he has a missed draw, he's never calling any amount, but if he has a weak ace, or even a king, he might think I missed a draw and is using this scary board to try and rep a monster. Since we faded the snap call, I'm confident we're ahead, and hoping he puts in the chips, but he ends up making the right play by folding. After a couple easy wins, we unfortunately went card dead for the next few orbits, but don't worry because things are about to get crazy. Another dealer change just went down, which only means one thing: a local famous $15 bomb pot. 6 people decided to join the party, and I got dealt King 10 offsuit, which is actually a pretty solid hand for a bomb pot. With $90 in the middle, we're off to a flop of Queen Jack 7 with 2 spades, giving us an open-ended straight draw. Action gets checked to me, and in bomb pots you don't want to bluff unless 1, you're in late position, and 2, you have equity. Since 3 people checked to me who should be betting a queen or better, and I know I have outs no matter what happens, I definitely have the green light to start a bluff. So I take a stab at this pot with a bet of $55, which gets the cutoff out of the way. But now the button, who's a crazy action player who has played on some of the biggest poker streams in the country, now raises us 100 more to 155. Folds back to me, we have ourselves an easy decision. Call and see a turn because raising makes no sense. If I folded, I might as well quit poker. I throw in the extra $100, increasing this pot to $400 even. So we're off to a turn heads up, and it peels off the best card in the deck and the 9 of diamonds, giving us the stone cold nuts. I check, hoping he bombs it so I could get all the money in on the turn, but he ends up checking it back. I doubt 2 pair of sets are checking this turn since there's a flush draw available, so I'm putting our opponent on ace queen, king queen, and all the flush draws. Off to a river, and it peels off a super interesting card in the ace of hearts. Never checking because I'm worried our opponent would check this card back a ton, so now we just have to determine how much to value bet for. If he has king queen, then it's going to be hard for him to call any size bet. There's a ton of hands that he could have in his range that improved on this river. For example, there's ace queen that rivered top 2 pair, ace jack of spades that also has 2 pair, and any other nut flush draws that ran into top pair. I think most of these holdings will be forced to call down a lot, which is why I settled on a bet of $280. Our opponent says how he was trying to bloat up the pot with the nut flush draw as a bluff, but ran into the river and has to pay us off by flicking in the call. I obviously roll over the winner, and he shows ace 10 of spades. I'm surprised he called me down that light because he's not really beating anything on that board. He's blocking all the missed draws, but none of that matters because I just got one thing to say.
Tell him to bring me my money.
About 45 minutes went by where we lost $130 just missing flops completely, until another dealer change went down, which means it's time for my favorite thing in poker, another local famous $15 bomb pot. Historically, I've done really well in these, as you saw in the last hand, so let's see if we can keep that trend going. Only 5 people decided to join the party for this one. I'm in the big blind and look down at the ladies, pocket queens. With $60 in the pot, we're off to a flop of 6-5-3 with 2 diamonds, giving us the overpair on a very connected board. Hard to know if my hand is good since I'm up against 4 other people who have any 2 cards in their hand. There's only one thing to do, which is bet and see what happens. I throw out a bet of $35 to get value from all the draws and smaller pairs. Now the player to my right in the small blind thinks 35 isn't enough and re-raises us to 80. This player hasn't really gotten out of line all session, so I'm a little concerned I'm beat by 2 pair or even a set. But for only $45 more, there's no way in hell I'm folding, so I throw in the extra chips, increasing this pot to $235, and we're off to a turn which pairs the board on the 3 of spades. I honestly love this card because 5-6 is now counterfeited. We have it crushed. I was hoping our opponent checked, but she doesn't seem phased at all and continues with the bet of $100 even. Not loving it, but I can't give it up just yet, especially after the board paired, so I slide in calling chips and this pot has quickly ballooned to $435. Off to a river hoping for a queen to make my life easier, but it peels off a horrible card in the 4 of diamonds, bringing in both the front door flush and putting 4 to a straight. Our opponent slows down and checks, and I debated if I needed to turn my hand into a bluff, but I figured I was too strong, so I check it back and she shows ace 6 of spades for top pair top kicker, which we have destroyed. The beauty about bomb pots is people overvalue their hands super often and spaz out, which makes them super profitable in the long run if you play them right. I played for another hour and was either dealt complete trash or a small pocket pair and missed every set mining operation possible. So instead of boring you guys with a few small pots that I played in, just make sure you stay for day 2 because it features some crazy hands and even crazier bluffs. But for now, let's get to the outro.
Just gotta give a quick shout out to Bomb Pots for giving us the majority of our profit today. In for the original 500, out for 1108 for a solid $608 win.
For day 2, we decided to run it back and play in the 1-3 match stack game again and buy in for our standard of $500. After a slow start to the day, we're about 30 minutes in and down around 45 bucks before our first interesting hand of the day. In order to try and increase the action, I throw on the $6 straddle and get calls from the low jack and cutoff. Action gets folded to me, and I look down at 40% of a royal flush and queen jack of hearts. Never checking my option with such a strong holding, so I raise the price of poker to $35, and both limpers end up putting in the call, increasing the spot to 105. Off to the driest flop of all time and King 7 Deuce Rainbow, giving us some backdoor straight and flush draws and nothing else. I could start off with a small bet to start a bluff with, but since I'm out of position to both players, I wanted to check and get free information based on what they decided to do. They both end up checking back. I figured a king or a set would have thrown out a small bet for value, so I'm going to use that in the near future. Still going 3 ways to a turn, and it peels off the 10 of clubs, giving us an open-ended straight draw and putting 2 clubs on the board. On such a dry flop, I'd check back a lot of my strong holdings like aces, kings, ace-king, and king-queen, since it'd be hard to get action from worse, but I feel like I could confidently rep all those hands with the turn bet. So I throw out a semi-bluff for $55. Neither player is phased because both end up putting in the chips, increasing the spot to 270. The good news is we didn't get raised on the turn, which means someone having king 10 is out of the picture, so I'm likely putting one of them on a strong 10 and the other on a draw. Keeping that in mind, we're off to a river hoping for an ace or a 9, but it rolls out a complete blank in the 5 of spades. Could give up and check, but since I determined no one should have a king, all the draws missed, we have the perfect spot to fire out another bluff. So I throw out a hefty bet of $170 in red chips, hoping my line still looks super strong. And it seems to have worked because both players toss their hands in the muck, and we scoop in $185 of profit with just queen high. This next hand, the hijack, who's been opening a ton of hands today, opens the action to $20. Cutoff calls, button calls, small blind calls. I'm in the big blind and look down at king queen of hearts. I could call, but I have a hand that's ahead of most, if not all of these guys' ranges, since the first open was in late position and no one 3-bet our opponent, so I think the best course of action is to put in the squeeze play. I make it $140 to go, either looking to take down $80 pre-flop or play a bloated pot with a beautiful hand. But I guess the hijack woke up with something because he ends up going all in for $500 total. Everyone else gets out of the way. Even though I already put $140 in the middle, we unfortunately have to give this one up because at best we're flipping, but we're most likely dominated. So I fold and he shows ace king of spades, which has us crushed. I think raising to $100, especially with these stack sizes, accomplishes the same thing, so I could have saved around 40 bucks there. Looking to get that money back in this next hand when early position opens the action to $25. Button calls, small blind calls, and I'm in the big blind and look down at the jackasses, pocket jacks. Usually this is a mandatory 3-bet, especially with 2 callers in between, but the problem is this specific opponent in early position hasn't opened a hand all session and is now opening for a massive sizing of $25. I'm basically putting him on 10s through aces, ace king, and nothing else, so re-raising in this spot is out of the question, so I proceed with caution and just call. $100 even in the pot, off to a flop 4 ways of jack 6-4 with 2 hearts, giving us top set. Small blind starts off with a check. I check to disguise my hand. Now the original raiser throws out a half pot bet of $50. Action gets folded to the small blind, who also calls. Now we have ourselves a decision. Call or put in a raise. If I was heads up with the original raiser, I'd just flat to disguise my hand since he's pretty short stacked and I don't need protection. Since I'm over $450 effective with the small blind, I want to raise to an amount that I could set up a jam on the turn. So I make it $120 to go, and the player in early position decides to go all in for $147 total. Small blind now goes in the tank and eventually decides to make the call, which to me screamed they had a flush draw since I'm blocking top pair. They're never calling with a hand like pocket sevens or pocket eights. The all in wasn't big enough to reopen the action, so all I could do is call the extra $27. So now the pot's sitting at $540, and we're off to a turn hoping for a blank. We get what we want when the 7 of clubs peels off because it's super rare someone has 8-5 or 5-3 given the action. Small blind checks and flow. There's only one thing to do, which is to put our opponent to the test and go all in. I was expecting him to tank, but he immediately snap calls, increasing this pot to $1,110. I fast roll my hand. Since I'm putting early position on an overpair and the small blind on a flush draw, I want to fade an overcard and a non-board pairing heart, so dealer one time, please give us a safe one. Dealer burns a card, throws out a great one in the 9 of clubs, giving us the winner after early position folds pocket kings face up. The small blind says he had pocket 4s for bottom set. Wasn't expecting him to be that strong since he never raised, but no complaints here as we scoop in this massive pot to get us well above the even mark. After hitting top set and scooping in a 4-figure pot, we unfortunately lost a ton of small ones, resulting in losing over $100 before our next interesting hand. In this one, the $6 under the gun straddle is on. An action folds to me in middle position, and I look down at 40% of a royal flush and king jack of spades. I raise the price of poker to $20. It folds all the way to the straddler, who puts in the call, so we're going heads up to a flop of 10-7-3 rainbow, giving us 2 overs and both backdoor straight and flush draws. He checks and flow, and given that there's a ton of cards on the turn that will either give me additional equity or at least a pair, I decide to throw out a bet of $20 to set up a turn barrel. He quickly calls, doubling this pot to 80. We're off to a turn which peels off the 9 of clubs. Our opponent checks again, and even though we picked up additional equity because now any 8 gives us a straight, this isn't the card you want to continue bluffing with. Our opponent has a ton of hands like 10-9, 10-8, and 8-7 in their range that all either improved their specific hand or picked up equity, has us in horrible shape. So I check it back, looking to give up on most rivers, until it peels off a super interesting card in the ace of diamonds, and our opponent checks it over for a 3rd time. Even though this card didn't improve my specific holding, I think we have the green light to bluff because I would have played a ton of ace-x hands this way, specifically ace-king, ace-queen, and ace-jack. I also think our opponent would have let out on the river with all his 2 pairs or better, so I'm confident he's capped to 1 pair at best, and this ace should be a scare card for him. Since I mainly put him on a 10 at best, I don't think we need to bet too big to make our story believable that we improved, especially with my tight image. So I settle on a bet of $65, which sends our opponent in the tank. He's probably contemplating how this is never a bluff because my hand looks so much like ace-king or ace-queen, but unfortunately for us, he ends up putting in the call. After I roll over my hand, he shows ace-8 of hearts for rivered top pair. Given that he went in the tank after rivering top pair, I think the bet would have gotten the job done against any other pair than the ace, but we just happened to run into it this time, which sucked. After getting caught bluffing, we experienced one of the worst things in poker, which is to go card dead for over an hour straight with no chance of redeeming yourself. But no worries, because I finally look at the best hand I've seen in over an hour. I'm in the hijack and get dealt 9-7 of clubs. You know you've been card dead if this hand excites you just as much as seeing aces on a normal day. But here we are. I open it up to $20. Now the cutoff doesn't think 20 is enough and puts in a 3-bet to 55. Folds back to me. If he went bigger, I'd probably just fold, but for only $35 more with the chance to likely crack a big hand, I'm in there. With 110 in the pot, we're going heads up to a flop of ace-8-6 with 2 diamonds, giving us an open-ended straight draw. Not too bad of a start if we want to win a big hand, so I start off with a check, and surprisingly our opponent checks it back. This can only mean 2 things. He has aces or ace-king in his trapping, or he has 10s through kings and absolutely hated this card. Keeping that in mind, we're off to a turn which peels off the 3 of spades, putting 2 flush draws on the board. I could obviously check, but I think the best course of action is to take our chances that he has 10s through kings since there's way more combinations of those, try to win this pot with the bluff. If he doesn't fold, we could still improve by hitting our straight. So I start off with a bet of $50 to which he quickly calls. Even if he had all those pairs smaller than the ace, I'm never expecting him to fold to just one bet, so we're going to need to keep firing in order to accomplish our goal and win this pot. Off to a river hoping for a 10 or a 5 to make my life easier, but it peels off the 4 of clubs and we miss our draw completely. Only one way to win this pot, that's by letting him hang and going for gold. I don't want to overbet the pot and polarize myself to either one of the top hands or nothing, so I settle on a bet of $120, which sends our opponent in the tank. This is a sizing I'd use with a hand like ace-8, ace-6, or a set, so the fact that he's tanking seems like it's good news for us. Or at least I thought it was, until he puts in a raise to 270, and I think it's safe to say I officially fell for his trap. I just never see him folding pocket aces or ace-king if I go all in, so the only thing to do is take the L, fold, and move on. We're nearing the end of our session and only up around 20 bucks after being up over 500, so this session has quickly taken a turn for the worse. This next hand, early position opens the action to $15, 3 people call, I'm in the small blind and look down at 8-9 of diamonds. I'd love to put in the squeeze play with such a playable hand, but since my table image isn't the greatest at the moment, I decided to play it safe and just call, and the big blind calls as well. With $90 in the middle, we're going 6 ways to a flop of 7-5 deuce with 2 clubs and a diamond, giving us a gut shot to the nut straight and a backdoor flush draw. Nothing to do than just check and see what develops. Now action gets checked all the way to the button, who throws out a pretty small bet of $30, which to me screams weakness. If the button had a big hand, he would have sized up for protection on this board, especially with so many people in the pot, so I don't think he has much. Small blind ends up folding. I could just call the $30 to try and hit my draw, or at least increase my equity. I'm not a big fan of calling with just a gut shot and 3 people still left to act, so if you thought I was done bluffing because it hasn't worked out all day, you must not know what I'm about because there's only one option. Raise the price of poker to $100 for max fold equity to try and take down this pot with just 9 high. But I guess it's not going to be that easy because the original raiser in early position cold calls the $100 raise, which I definitely wasn't expecting. But what I was expecting was the button folding, so our read of him being weak was spot on. So now we have to think of what the player in early position has. On this board, I think him having an overpair is super unlikely because he would have not only c-bet big on the flop for protection, but he probably would have jammed over my raise for max value. So in my opinion, our opponent is strictly on a club draw and not much else. With 320 in the pot, we're going heads up to a turn hoping to avoid a club or any card that gives our opponent a pair. And we get what we want when the 7 of diamonds rolls out on the turn, giving us additional equity with the flush draw. I honestly love this card because our opponent never has a 7 in his range, so there's only one thing to do.
All in.
We fade the snap call, which is huge for us because I'm confident he doesn't have an overpair now. After a few seconds, he ends up tossing his hand in the muck. We scoop in this sizable pot with just 9 high. The 3-hour mark just hit, which is when I usually end all my sessions. I'm fired up we were able to get the bluff through in our last 1-3 session of the year, so let's get to the outro.
I'm glad we got that bluff through in our last hand to book a solid profit in our last 1-3 session of the year. In for the original 500, and out for 725 for a $225 win.
As for this week in poker, I played 6 hours even and profited $833 for an hourly win rate of $138.83. Wish every week went this smooth, but gotta take them when you could get them. As for our 1-2 stats, they didn't change at all because we only played 1-3 this week. But as for 1-3, it's officially a wrap in 2025, and I hit my goal to play 100 hours even at this stake. I profited $4,642 for an hourly win rate of $46.42. I couldn't be more thrilled to hit that number, especially after our horrendous start to the year. Combining these numbers, I've played 197 hours of live poker in 2025 and profited $7,983 for an hourly win rate of $40.52. I have one 1-2 session left in 2025 to end the year with a bang, so stay tuned for next week to see how we finish. Thanks for watching, and as always, I hope you guys run good at the tables and I'd appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button to help me reach my new year-end goal of 31,000 subscribers.